Thank you everyone for being here on the final day of ELK 2026. This session is Redesigning at Scale, Edu Course Redevelopment at Colorado Mountain College, and you may have seen it on the session as Redesigning 30-ish Courses in 30-ish Days. And this is presented by Natalie Cole and Karen Kaemmerling from CMC. So I'll hand it over to both of you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica. Welcome, everybody. I do now realize that we had a different name on the online. So yes, it is 30-ish courses and 30-ish days. We also are calling it Redesigning at Scale. One sounds more fun. We're going to have fun no matter what. So my name is Natalie Cole, and with me is Karen Kaemmerling. And we'll go to the
Hi,
next slide.
everyone. Pleasure to meet you. I'm the Assistant Dean of Instruction for Online Learning and also a member of our ad hoc design team.
Thanks, Karen. My name is Natalie Cole. I'm the Learning Technology Equity and Access Administrator at CMC. We both work for Colorado Mountain College, and we are both part of our design team at CMC. And our emails are up on the screen if you wanted to get in contact with us. I wanted to start with the ways that we've made this presentation accessible to people who need it. We have the slides available as a PDF on the Discord if you wanted to view on your own. The slides do follow the WCAG guidelines 2.1 AA, so they should be accessible to people who use assistive technology. And then I wanted to point out that Zoom has a closed captioning feature that you can use. It's under More and then Show Captions. So if anybody needed those, you can turn them on your own.
Today, we kind of have two objectives. We wanted to explore our project organization for our instruction design on a budget, a pretty strict budget. And also, the other objective is to analyze our success and challenges of our project, to share insights that we discovered. And I think probably to set a little bit of the stage, I want to make sure everyone understands that we are, the design team is comprised of people at CMC who have other responsibilities at the institution and limited amount of time.
Okay, so we're going to start with a little bit of an activity. If you are working on an instructional design project or an instructional design team at your institution, you may have come across this email. It says, "Hi, instructional design team. The EDU department has asked for our support in a major summer redesign effort involving 32 courses across multiple formats. Each Canvas blueprint should be ADA accessible, designed with OER, follow an 8-week or 15-week format, and use our department's custom design template. Please work with the faculty to complete this project by the grant end date, which is 30 days from now. This will be a substantial lift, but I know our team is well positioned to take it on together." You can just show of hands who has seen something similar like this to your institution. Are we alone? Does anyone else get these requests?
We can take thumbs ups, cascading. There.
Yeah. We figured we weren't alone with this. This does happen. And so that was the impetus for our project. How did we tackle this situation?
So we were sort of stuck in this situation of trying to mobilize pretty quickly. And Natalie and I volunteered for the project, and we have this dream team concept of a perfect timeline, and we wanted quality and had to build those relationships with the faculty and also maintain our sanity. We thought that was important as well. But which one of these do we protect? Which one do we maybe have to give up? What would you pick to give up? Just a cascade response in the chat would be great.
I'm seeing a lot of sanity, which is kind of what we thought might happen. Um, it's like timeline quality and relationships are all glass balls, but then sanity is a rubber one, so you think it'll bounce back. And we're hoping that through this conversation, we can talk about the methods that we implemented to preserve our sanity and keep those other three balls up in the air. So, going back to the original email we got, I wanted to give more context into what the project was. There's two instructional designers, and as Karen mentioned at the top of the presentation, we're instructional designers that also have other roles at the college. So our instructional design team, each person is allotted about 10 hours as a supplemental contract that they do as an extension of their job already. It's on top of what they already are do at the college. So this is supposed to be extra. So it was Karen and I as part of this project, and it was deemed extra. There's two department leads for our project. There, you can consider them more like project managers. They were the two department heads at the for EDU for education department, and they were the ones that wanted this course redevelopment project to go through. And then we worked with 28 faculty who were our course developers, our subject matter experts who were doing a lot of the redesign with our help. So that's kind of how our project was laid out.
So early on in the project, Natalie and I met with those two project coordinators who were the program leads for the EDU department. And we collaborated with them and discussed what were their non-negotiables that we absolutely had to have in all of the courses. And so the first, of course, was ADA compliance and accessibility. And really modeling that for future teachers. Assigned a course design template. And so we worked with them to develop a template for their program and provide that in all of the initial shells for all of the faculty. We were also expected to have OER resources, which I just see now is misspelled. It's amazing what you can see in a presentation. But we were expecting to have OER courses for all of the EDU classes. It was also intended to be modality agnostic, which is really interesting, but they offer the classes both face-to-face, remote real-time, and a little bit asynchronously, but not very often. And then also we had 8-week courses that we were building and 15-week courses with the same content, but we needed to consider the different lengths. So that was really important as well.
So it was just a small checklist, just very small and easy, right? This was our timeline. We mentioned that it was 30-ish days. So we started in April with our planning stage and getting our contracts together to be able to kick it off. So started in April, we did request and planning. We moved into our actual contracts in May. We kicked off our onboarding with our faculty in June and had a meeting together as a group in person. Our organization is 11 campuses across the Mountain West, so getting together is sometimes difficult. So that's why we had that kickoff in June. And then we spent most of June and July doing development and feedback iterated cycles with our faculty. And then we wrapped up the entire thing in August. So it's really towards the end here from June to August where the faculty were doing that work, that development work. And so it was a pretty speedy process through here.
So I attended the June 20th meeting and provided support live, and there was not one class that had actually started the build. They hadn't even kind of looked at their syllabus. So despite the fact that it seems like there was some things happening, it was really high level things that were happening, organizing to get the project launched and the money from the grant that they had organized to be able to deliver. But the faculty actually didn't start working on anything until after June 20th. So we we were looking at sorry, my screen it just went black. We had a couple different things that we were trying to do with these courses, and one of the things that we needed to consider is that there were 17 courses actually completed in the end. 5 courses got removed from the project about halfway through. There were teams of that had extenuating circumstances and needed significant extensions. We had one course with no communication from the faculty or how the progress was going. We had 6 courses or 6 average course reviews by the ID team members, which means we looked at the courses at least 6 times when we were supporting them. We also had around 6 communications per faculty or team that was working. And so one of the things I think that also we need to bring out is that there were not any courses really being developed by one individual, but they were supposed to be developed by a team of individuals, which also made things really interesting. And Natalie and I had started with this idea that we would interact with them more directly, but really they were interacting with each other. But it was at least 25 hours per week, well outside of our allotted 10 that we were originally given as instructional designers. So those are just how it landed when we were done in August.
So I want to talk through a little bit of our process because we were really proud of the 6 times that we got to interact with faculty and we're reviewing those courses. I felt like that was a pretty substantial amount for a faculty-led redesign project to be able to get reviewed by an instructional designer 6 times. So this is how our review process went. We started with an initial check of the course of did they even start? Karen mentioned at the beginning um, they had not started their redevelopment until probably June, late June, even though we started this project in April. So we spent a good amount of time actually in this initial stage of, okay, reminding faculty like, hey, this is coming up. I know that this semester is busy. Spring break is a good time to be working on this, all that kind of stuff. So that initial phase of like, did they start? Is there anything for us to start working on? Then we went to our first review. Karen and we broke the courses in half. So there's 32 of them. She took 16, I took 16, and we consider ourselves the lead instructional designer for those 16. So that lead instructional designer would create the course checklist for that course. We had developed that checklist at the beginning with the project managers to decide what we wanted to have in the course. That was the ADA, that was the OER, all of those items. So the lead ID would go through and review the course based on that checklist to get some targeted feedback. Then the secondary instructional designer would review that course and checklist to enhance the feedback. So this was really special for us because my background is more in universal design for learning and accessibility. So I could do a lot of that more technical feedback of like, hey, you can't use PDFs that look like this, that kind of stuff. And then Karen has extensive background in like course design and OER and all of those pieces. So we really balanced each other in that partner review. Once we finished the partner review, that checklist went to the faculty so they could look at our feedback and start to implement it.
So then after that first round of feedback implementation, the faculty course developers were encouraged to implement that feedback and at times requested our support as they needed it. Again, there was a tight timeline, and so there was a lot of us checking to see if something had happened. based on our feedback. And then there was a final review feedback piece where, again, we both ended up looking at a course, reviewing that final checklist again. So again, it was a double support to make sure that the course had all the elements. And so again, the lead and ID would review it for the first final round of feedback, and then the secondary ID would check it again. And then finally, we would get to the final review, final last things. And I will say we were pretty careful when we provided feedback to faculty to focus on the most important things in each stage so that they didn't get overwhelmed or super frustrated with the amount of things that we were suggesting. Certainly, we would kind of come back to things, but there were highlighted items that we focused on. And so we would call them our done courses when we finally got to the final implementation. Oh, Natalie, you're muted.
Thanks. Okay, yeah. So we would get to the end and we would have like a done check. So our institution doesn't have a project management site that maybe other institutions have for a course development process like this. So it's Karen and I working on a spreadsheet. And so we came up with like little like color coding and things like that to help us move along in the project. And so once a course was marked as done, that meant that we could give it to the EDU department leads to look over and make sure that it aligned with their course objectives that they had for the overall project. And so it just meant that there was no additional actions that we would need the faculty to do for our list. And so, yep, once it was done with us, it would go to the department head.
And I'll just add to that. As courses became done, we would send an updated list to the department heads because really they're project managers of the grant and all of those things. And so for contracts and payment, they needed to know how people were progressing. And so we were giving, I would say, at least weekly updates to the department heads on where projects were. So there were a few things that I think really, again, for instructional design team that is not working full-time with no support tools, but simply just two individuals pulling this together. Some things that really helped us help the faculty was our course checklist that we described and will show shortly. The course syllabus and template got every faculty starting from a common place. The facilitator and snapshot guides. So we did provide a support course in Canvas, which is our LMS for all of the faculty with all kinds of support content, but also they had some feedback from us that was giving them some quick feedback on how to move forward. And then we also included a student success module in each course. We built a module, and so these are what some people would consider master courses or blueprints. And so we have this module in each course that we could improve on and help set the tone for an EDU student, because our EDU students do have a lot of live components, field work that they're doing and things like that. And so they needed to understand the overall layout of the course, which was online in virtual or live in-person sessions, as well as their field work. So we had some essential things that helped the courses be consistent for the student experience across all the courses.
I wanted to dig into the faculty support course a little bit more. Because there were just two instructional designers on the project, we really needed to bulk up our resources so we could act like there was a whole team that was there supporting. So here's a couple of things that we had inside this support course. It was inside Canvas. So we had a getting started guide, which oriented the faculty to the project. The non-negotiables at the beginning, where to go for help, the timeline, things along those lines. We had some help for the ADA requirements and implementing universal design for learning strategies. This was more of just blanket information for those that were maybe newer to this type of work. We had some guidance on assessment strategies, and some of this stuff we pulled from our other resources. So it was just a collective um, course at the beginning. So assessment strategies, we talked about the alternative term considerations. Building an 8-week format is new for our college. So we collected some information on how to do that, using backwards design, some of the implications of designing an 8-week course, how to build a course map, things along those lines. We had digital and modality best practices. Karen mentioned that this was um, it was modality agnostic, so it could be in a face-to-face course or it could be distance learning. So how to design for both of those situations. And then this design project required field experience for the students. So this was directly from the EDU department heads on how to design for field experience, what it needed to look like. And then we had an instructional design toolkit with just some ad hoc things, such as how to do course mapping, OER guidance, and then the tips and tricks of Canvas. So really what we were trying to do is make another instructional designer, somebody that could be there when we weren't. So our 25 hours wasn't 50 hours, wasn't 60 hours. It was trying to create another person for us.
Um, other things that I think really supported the faculty through this process, and I'll just speak just for a moment. The faculty were all over the board on their experience, from individuals who are full-time, individuals who are adjunct. When I went to the June 20th meeting, there were individuals who weren't even hired yet and had never worked in an LMS before. And so supporting that wide range really relied on our communication system, not only between Natalie and I, but also between the faculty and us. And so we provided a lot of prompt asynchronous feedback through email communication. And we also provided significant number of one-on-one sessions, including I had some of these people are also teachers in public schools. And so I was meeting with individuals like at 6:30 in the morning sometimes because that's when they could meet. We had weekly department leader reports, and so we did notify the chairs and director of the EDU department really regularly with what was happening, so that they knew everything that was going on to support their faculty. We had the individual course checklist that we described earlier that really just helped us know. And so initially, Natalie and I kind of had it in a spreadsheet just so we could see if they had the basic framework in the course. And then more specific for the course itself went to the faculty. We tracked their progress with the spreadsheet with dates that we visited a course and anything that new that we saw. And then Natalie did a really fantastic job of creating what we call canned communication, that at certain points through their course development process, we had a email that was stored that had all of the niceties in it, all the support words in it, but also we could customize with here are the 3 things that you really need to focus on and get in and do next. And so that really helped be consistent and allowed for us to send one email to the whole team that was working on a course. Natalie, you're still muted again. Sorry.
I need to stop doing that. Okay, we just wanted to talk about the key features of our success. So we're going to talk about strategy, communication, organization. So the first tip I wanted to talk about is this divide and conquer strategy that Karen and I had. I had mentioned before that we divided the courses and there was two leads. So like Karen was lead on 16 courses, I was lead on 16. And that followed the leader's system where I would visit a course first and then Karen would go after and visit. It first eliminates the knowledge gaps, but I think it also eliminated some of the burnout. If I just had to review what Karen had already put down and like add to it, that's way less labor intensive than like starting from the beginning. So that follow the leader situation was really helpful for us.
And I also really, I'll just add to that just a second that I really loved that Natalie was right there. If I missed something and I was doing all of the online learning, link checking, and all of those things, and our perspectives sometimes were a little different, and I think the faculty received better feedback because we came with slightly different um, thoughts. Um, and I think, so it was a summer and I had vacation, Natalie had things, we had conferences we were going to. And so a lot of times we weren't able to meet live, but we had a shared communication platform with each other so I could see what she had done that day. And, uh, and she could see what I had done, and we could see which courses weren't making progress, and we did have a little bit of a color coding system, and honestly it was that gave us some joy when we gave things colors, but we were tracking that progress and able to see what each other was going through and supporting each other. We had a shared folder. I think Natalie's technology experience really helped with all of this because she was able to set up all of that, so that it was very easy for us to go back and forth and communicate with each other. And those canned communication templates really helped. I do see a question from Cheryl on how is the feedback received by the faculty and the leadership. And I will say, because we had established some expectations, particularly at that June 20th meeting, the faculty knew what some of the expectations were, so that really helped. And we really worked on a very supportive communication. It wasn't like, oh, look what you missed. It was much bigger picture type communication, and things they needed to be aware of. For instance, that they really love Google Docs in the EDU department, and we had some concerns about that. So we didn't really have anyone get defensive, per Brad's question. What we did see a little bit of, and we'll talk about the challenge more, is it just wasn't, the faculty needed to be involved earlier in the project. And what happened if someone missed the due date was the next question. And so that was a real challenge, especially in the summer for educators who are finally not teaching full time in a regular classroom. It was a real challenge. We had lots of missed due dates. And that really just meant that Natalie and I were really working harder because we had to check to see if something was done and they had missed a due date. And then we would follow up with the team and we would kind of get a new due date. But there was a hard stop in August because classes were running in these new shells starting like August 15th. So they really did have a hard stop. And we just kind of, again, the leader for that particular course, the instructional leader for that particular thing, we were the ones that were kind of reaching out and encouraging and making notes in our spreadsheet. Okay, well, they're not actually going to start till July 15th. We had some that didn't start till July 20th. And it just meant we had to check and be more on top of those.
And then the only thing I'll add is we didn't necessarily have to act as the stick all that much. It was us as the instructional designers that were helping with the feedback and implementing all of the work, but there was also the department heads who were the project managers that assign the contracts to the faculty. And so we didn't have to deal with necessarily, will you get paid or not? So there was, um, we got to be a little bit gentler of like, let's work through it and, work around these circumstances, but we didn't have to handle the, hey, you didn't do it, so you can't get paid. So having that separation was helpful for us. Okay, tip 3 is having consistent and flexible communication. And this is on all levels. So between Karen and I, we use WebEx at CMC, so we would be chatting all day between the two of us about what's going on. And then our faculty are some were adjunct faculty, some were full-time, and so they had a range of communication preferences. So we just met them where they were, whether that was WebEx, Zoom, a cell phone. I was FaceTiming with them. So we really had to be flexible on how we were meeting our faculty and then how Karen and I were meeting each other because, this was also in the summer. So we had vacations, we had conferences, we had things. So Karen and I were texting, we were on WebEx, and we just decided to be very flexible of how this would work for us.
So I see the question from Kathy about how much the faculty got paid. And I'll just say in this particular case, because it was a grant, I don't actually know exactly how much people were paid, but they were paid also in tiers. So there were some individuals who were only working on one course, and there were other individuals who were working on multiple courses, maybe up to 4. And so the faculty were paid from the grant money, and they had different levels of responsibility in the collaboration process for a team. And so the pay definitely varied depending on their role. At CMC, we do have some standards for payment for instructional design, but again, this was a grant process. So it was a multi-tiered review process with multiple rounds of feedback from us. And so I think the faculty actually really responded to that. So initially we're really looking at structures and things like that. And then as they built assignments with instructions and rubrics and those kinds of things, we were able to kind of continuously revisit a course and provide compliments, which we did plenty of, but also provide, this link isn't working, to, hey, you have, it was one like they had 40 assignments in an 8-week course or something like that. And we're like, well, that's probably too many. So we were able to provide multiple rounds, and I think we were non-threatening in that sense. Some people would be concerned, I think, that, oh, well, why wouldn't you tell me everything all at once? Well, everything wasn't ready all at once. And so I think the different levels of review do help the faculty kind of guide them through the instructional design process in a very short amount of time. How did you keep trust between the two of us? Well, we work really well together. We occasionally have margarita dinners to talk about how things are going, but we work really well, and we do have a lot of trust. We work on a lot of projects together, and actually Natalie's probably my favorite person to work with at CMC. And so it really helps that we can kind of also express our frustrations with each other, and there certainly have been times where we have to be kind of blunt, but we're pretty easygoing, happy-go-lucky people mostly, so that really helped. And so it was easy for us to maintain trust, also because that spreadsheet, I knew exactly the last time Natalie had looked at a course, and then I might look at it and go and put in my date, and so that kind of thing. It just really worked.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And then yeah, it's nice to have someone that is fun and you can trust that they will get the project done. It's presuming that positive intent. If Karen didn't get something done, I know it's because like she needs time, she'll do it the next day. And I think she has that same trust with me. And margaritas are always fun. The only thing I'll add about tip 4 here is that the multi-tier review process was like we tackled the big stuff in the beginning, so they weren't getting bogged down with with a review of like, oh, you have 5 broken links. Like that's not important at the very first look at a course. It's like the big things. So then it felt like when they got to the end of the process and they had like the feedback of like, you have 4 uncapitalized words or something like that. It's like, oh, this is easy. I'm almost done. So it was that graduated support that I think was really helpful for them. So we did do a survey. It was very lightly responded to, but I thought it was still helpful. We like to do surveys. So of our 3 responded to, 100% said that they were satisfied with the project. I needed to do some more spell check in this, but they were satisfied with the project. We thought it was interesting that 2 of them spent around 10 hours on the project and one spent um, 40 to 60 hours. So there was a range there. And they indicated that the in-person meeting that we had at the start of the project was the most helpful. So the way we interpreted that and are taking it going forward is to have more opportunities for faculty to work together. We did get some more feedback in the process through some open-ended parts of the survey. They really liked the consistency and structure of the template. This is something that CMC has struggled with, having a consistent template for students. It tends to be discipline by discipline, school by school, and how they want to set up their Canvas course, which can, sometimes be difficult for students where they start at the beginning of the year and they have to learn what is going on in that class. So this consistency and structure of the template was really helpful, and it was indicated by our students. The EDU department did a survey with their students, and that was the number one thing that they asked for is make all the courses look the same. Um, the faculty wish that their team had more clear role assignments. So I think I had mentioned that the faculty work together on their courses. They would be assigned, or not assigned, they would pick like 2 or 3 courses to work on, and they might be in groups. And with any group project, it can end up where one person is doing a lot of the work and the other people are just hanging on. And so they wish that there was a little bit more structure around that group project so that they could be a little bit more successful. And then they also wished that there was improved communication expectations for the project. And this is a little bit tricky because we felt as instructional designers, we communicated what they needed to have done. We did not get to pick the timeline. And that was news to us, as sometimes that can happen with these projects. So, we started this project in April, and it wasn't until June that faculty got to meet with each other. And then at that meeting, they were told that they needed to have their syllabus done by the end of June, which was like a week later. So there was definitely some frustration around that. And we didn't always get to pick some of those timelines. So what we took from that is that teams need to have a more intentional design around group work and group role assignments so they can be a little bit more successful, and have a little bit more clear expectations going forward of how to do this build.
These are just a little bit of the quotes that from the survey that kind of highlight. And so, and I think that it was certainly a challenge too for Natalie and I because there wasn't necessarily an assigned lead for the courses either. We just kind of figured out amongst the email correspondence who was actually responding and actually making the edits or updates, and that person ended up taking the ownership. And so I think that was one of the, I think a real disappointment for me as an instructional designer. I was super excited to work on a project and have more collaboration with a team of individuals, experts, and really see some innovation. And I think in the end, because there wasn't enough time and there wasn't enough coordination amongst the teams themselves, which again, we weren't really in that thick of it. We were in the results of the course, but we weren't really encouraged to lead any team collaboration or anything. That was something that was a disappointment. And so I think the teams really felt the need to meet more often. And on June 20th, when I watched the teams interact for the first time on this project, and nothing had been done yet on these projects, there was definitely full-time faculty who were kind of taking charge. And again, some adjuncts who had never taught the course even once before. And so it was really an interesting dynamic, even within the teams, that was probably fairly complicated.
Okay, so these are some reflections from Karen and I. The key parts we want to hit on is the partnership between us, why that was successful, setting clear expectations going forward, and some of the success we had in our overall organization in the project. So the first one, I think we've maybe hit this a little bit already, but having a strong partnership between Karen and I with definitive roles was very helpful. Also, the role between the instructional designer and the project managers or the EDU department heads. We didn't touch the contracts. We didn't touch the timeline. That was the department heads, that was the project managers. And I think having that delineation was really helpful because then we got to focus on the instructional design work and getting them across the finish line, not necessarily getting bogged down with the contracts of how people are getting paid and things along those lines. And that also helped maintain our reputation a little bit so we didn't have to be the quote unquote bad guys coming down with the stick.
And the only thing I think there too, the partnership between the instructional designer and the individuals building the courses, the faculty, the SMEs, was important. And I think Natalie and I, when we took this project on, we envisioned a lot more one-on-one meetings. We had even originally built it in our plan of a point that we would meet with every faculty before July 5th or something like that, July 7th. And they didn't really want to meet with us. They just wanted to get in and get going, and they really didn't see it as a value add for their time. And so most of our initial correspondence with faculty was one when we went to the June 20th day, but then afterwards we expected a little more interaction, and they are educators, so they kind of had some of all those basics that you might expect an educator to have. So I think they really were free to dive in and did a pretty good job even without us talking with them directly as often as we expected. Um, so for us, I think we maintained our consistent, clear timeline for ourselves. We knew where the hard stop was, and the goals, and we we were trying to communicate that to people as much as possible in a positive way. And then there were certain individuals and certain instances where we kind of ran into a situation where someone had personal loss and their course wasn't going to be launched until the spring. And so we actually allowed that certain individuals, and you saw that in our original numbers, to kind of postpone just a little bit and get our help a little later in the fall semester. Um, because in the end, you just want a quality course for the students, and it's not necessarily about the deadline. Um, and and I think as we're doing this as well with faculty, I think having a little bit of more of a buffer would be helpful. But we did buffer for each other when we couldn't be as active as we wanted to be. And then there were, again, sticking to our project non-negotiables. Faculty did a really amazing job of that because they had all seen that. I would have loved on June 20th or much earlier for us to really have more time to establish those goals together with faculty rather than just delivering the news of what the goals were.
And then the last tip that we have is if you are doing a group build like our faculty where they're working together on courses, if we could have facilitated some group dynamics for them where there was a lead and maybe some supports along those lines. Other things we could have done is had an earlier all faculty meeting. They did meet in June, but at that point it felt too little too late. They really needed something a little earlier on. Facilitation of that group roles. Something else we would have liked to do is have a baseline understanding meeting or session where we could talk about these are the non-negotiables in the course. This is how you do some of the ADA requirements. This is how you implement some of the UDL requirements. This is how you look for OER. Some of those like baseline um, sessions that could have helped with the build so that faculty could have um, felt more empowered throughout. And again, that earlier all faculty session would have been helpful. Okay. This is the end of our deck, but we're going to open it up to questions, comments if you have them. I know that some have been in chat and we've tried to answer them. So if you have any more, we would love to hear it.
I have a question about the accelerated timeline and not to bring AI into it, as always, but um, did you have any faculty or subject matter experts wanting to use AI since there was such an accelerated process, particularly for building instructional content? And how did you navigate that? Were there particular standards that you set around that sort of thing?
That's a great question. I think because of our group, it was education faculty, and it seemed to me that they did not want to use AI. Maybe that's just because of, they're teaching students and they just didn't want to. I'll say that, but also the department head used AI for all of her overview pages and things along those lines. For the most part, I think, Karen, we were pretty open with it. Like, use it as a tool, but don't make it the only thing that you're doing. Like, AI can't
Yeah.
build the course.
Yeah, and I would say this was a year ago, and the use of AI in course development has really blossomed over even the last year. And so certainly there was some use of AI in building of pages, particularly by the department head. But I think also when we talk about trust and that sort of thing, I think the team wanted to trust each other that they were going to create some original things. We even had some courses in Spanish, so I couldn't actually tell you whether things were misspelled or not. So I think the role of the instructional designer even is probably evolving, where we could now run that course through AI to be checked for things and stuff like that. And so I think our timeline for course development might be able to change. But also, and we are using AI in course development a lot now for our 8-week courses and all the other areas of the college that are launching in the summer. So I think it's a great opportunity. And I know there's been a lot of conversation about AI at this conference, but at that particular moment in last summer, most of the individuals, I think, relied on each other for content. And these courses weren't totally brand new. They were already teaching most of these courses. It was just a real opportunity to bring in a consistent shell across multiple faculty and really look at assignment design and maybe improve upon it. And so I think the educators had a pretty strong hold on that. Other questions?
Well, I have our emails up on the screen. I did load this presentation into the Discord along with 2 supporting documents. Our spreadsheet that we used, I cleaned that up so you could use that if you wanted to, and then a copy of our canned communication if anyone finds that helpful.
Awesome. I'm looking in chat. There's lots of kudos, but I think you may have answered all of the questions that came through during the presentation. So thank you so much. And we look forward to connecting in Discord if there's anyone who has questions for Natalie or Karen. But thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you in the next sessions. Bye all.
Thanks
Thank you.
everyone for coming on Friday.